Hetty was talking to her best friend Sadie. My son, Hetty said proudly, has 3 master's degrees in psychology, in philosophy, and in economics. To which Sadie replied, wow, that's very impressive. You must be so proud. I am proud, Hetty said. He can't get a job, but at least he understands why. Moishe, who lives in New York, calls his mother in Florida. Mom, how are you, he asks. Oy, I'm not good, his mother says. I'm feeling very weak. I haven't eaten in 23 days. You haven't eaten in 23 days? Why not? Well, I didn't want to have any food in my mouth just in case you should call. One more. Harry Goldberg is elected the first Jewish president in the history of the United States. At his inauguration, his mother is seated in the front row right next to the Secretary of State. And as her son is called up to take the oath of office, his mother nudges the Secretary of State and says, see my son up there? His brother's a doctor. Jewish mothers get a bad rap. In popular culture, Jewish mothers have unfortunately become stereotyped as overbearing, domineering, guilt-inducing, colossal figures in the lives of their children. Think of Sophie Portnoy, the famous mother in Philip Roth's novel, Portnoy's Complaint. She's a towering, smothering, suffocating figure in the life of her son. In one scene in the book, Sophie Portnoy rakes her son, Alexander, over the coals for going out for a hamburger and fries with his friends. And why is she so upset? Because of the havoc that hamburger is going to wreak on her son's stomach. As she says in that scene, why do you think your friend Melvin Weiner got colitis? He eats chazarai. As Alexander Portnoy says to his therapist in the book, I'm living in a Jewish joke, but it ain't no joke. Or take the Netflix romantic comedy series, Nobody Wants This. The show is about a young conservative rabbi dating a non-Jewish woman, and you won't be surprised to learn that the rabbi's mother on that show, played brilliantly by Tova Feldshuh, is overbearing. She's cruel, she's hypercritical. In other words, she is the perfect embodiment of the Jewish mother stereotype. And the show's been getting quite a bit of flack for that, by the way. In her book, You Never Call, You Never Write, A History of the Jewish Mother, the writer Joyce Antler says that the stereotypical Jewish mother hovers over her children, preventing them from achieving autonomy by interfering, cajoling, advising, and manipulating. Whether she's actually holding the spoon or just urging them to take one more bite, or she's operating through guilt, that most exquisite instrument of control, she is seen as ubiquitous and eternal. And if we can learn anything from the Torah readings and the Haftorah readings of Rosh Hashanah, it's that the stereotypical conception of what it means to be a Jewish mother is wrong. Because Rosh Hashanah, more than any other holiday on the Jewish calendar, is about celebrating Jewish motherhood. All of the Torah and Haftorah readings on Rosh Hashanah are about Jewish mothers. In a sense, today really is the original Mother's Day. And the mothers we read about on Rosh Hashanah, Sarah, Hagar, Hannah, and Rachel, they're not manipulative or overbearing. In fact, it's precisely the opposite. The mothers of Rosh Hashanah are defined by nothing but love, compassion, and the deepest level of care for their children. As I discussed in my sermon yesterday, in yesterday's Torah reading, we read about Sarah and the miraculous birth of her son Yitzchak. For much of her life, Sarah longed for a child. She endured decades of childlessness, watching others around her build families while her arms remained empty. Yet at the age of 90, when she had all but given up, God remembered Sarah, and she gave birth to Isaac, to Yitzchak, the forefather of the Jewish people. But Sarah is not the only mother we read about yesterday. We also read the story of Hagar, Sarah's Egyptian maidservant. When Sarah was struggling with infertility, she offered Hagar as a surrogate to Abraham so that they might have a child through her. And Hagar does indeed have a child, Ishmael. But after Yitzchak is born, Sarah forces Abraham to send Hagar and Ishmael out into the wilderness. And as they're about to run out of water and perish, in the desert, Hagar bursts into tears, not because of her own impending death, but because she's a mother. She's already grieving the imminent death of her child. And at that moment, God remembers Hagar and reveals to her a miraculous well of life-giving water. Both Hagar and Ishmael are saved. In yesterday's Haftarah, we read of yet another mother, Hannah. Like Sarah, Hannah struggled with infertility for many years. In her anguish, she enters the temple at Shiloh and she pours her heart out to God in fervent, silent prayer. Her praying is so intense, by the way, that the priest, Eli, actually thinks she's drunk. God hears her silent prayer, and she is blessed with a son, Shmuel, who will go on to become one of the great prophets of the Jewish people. This morning's Haftarah, taken from the book of Jeremiah, speaks of yet another mother, Rachel. As we read about this morning, a cry is heard from Ramah, wailing, bitter weeping. Rachel mevaka al baneha. Rachel is weeping for her children. She refuses to be comforted. Her children are gone. And later on in this morning's Haftarah, God speaks of the tribe Ephraim in terms that a mother might use to speak of her child. Haben yakir li Ephraim im yelad sha'ashuim ki midavrei bo zachar es karenu od. Is Ephraim not a precious child to me? Is he not a young boy, my greatest source of delight? And when I speak of him, I will remember him once more. And finally, there's one more mother who is present with us throughout Rosh Hashanah, the mother of Sisera, the great Canaanite general who was defeated by the Israelites in the book of Judges. After Sisera is defeated, the text tells us that his mother sat by her window, anxiously awaiting her son's return from battle. And as the minutes stretched into hours and Sisera doesn't come home, she wonders where her son is. Madua boshesh richba lavo. Why is his chariot taking so long to come home? Why can't I hear the clatter of its wheels? It's a heartbreaking scene. The maternal anxiety is palpable. You can feel it bursting through the words of the text. A mother yearning for her warrior son to return home from battle, yet knowing in her heart of hearts that she will never see her son again. The rabbis of the Talmud tell us that it is the cries of Sisera's mother that we remember each year when we hear the blasts of the shofar in Rosh Hashanah. The 100 blasts of the shofar mirror the cries, the 100 cries of Sisera's mother. Her wails of grief, her piercing cries for her lost child are echoed in the piercing cry of the shofar. These timeless stories of suffering mothers are especially resonant for us this year, because this year, so many of us spent 11 months listening to the pained, grieved, anguished words of another mother, another Rachel Goldberg, the mother of Hirsch Goldberg Poland, who was taken hostage after losing an arm at the Nova Music Festival on October 7th and was killed by Hamas last month after spending 11 months in captivity. I didn't know Hirsch personally, but like so many of you, I feel like I did, because Hirsch became the face of the hostages. His ubiquitous smile is seared into our collective memory, and we learned so much about Hirsch this past year through the tireless, heroic, Herculean effort of his parents, John and Rachel, but really his mother, Rachel, who spent every waking minutes from the moment she learned of Hirsch's abduction through the moment she learned of his death, working to bring Hirsch home. Maybe Rachel Goldberg is an overbearing Jewish mother, but she's only overbearing in the best of possible ways. For 11 months, she met with world leaders, celebrities, politicians. She spoke at the United Nations and at the Democratic National Convention. She begged us to do everything in our power to bring Hirsch and all of the hostages home. And through her tireless efforts and the boundless love she demonstrated for her son, Rachel Goldberg taught the world what it really means to be a Jewish mother. Rachel either recorded a message or spoke publicly on nearly every single day of Hirsch's captivity. And today, on a day when we remember and we celebrate Jewish mothers, I want to share some of Rachel's words with you. Because if anyone can capture the essence of what it means to be a Jewish mother, it's not Philip Roth, it's Rachel Goldberg. Here is what Rachel said on day 100 of Hirsch's captivity. When do I stop wearing masking tape? Every morning I walk out of my bedroom and I go directly outside to change the giant number chart on my porch for the whole world to see. The numbers are a sadistic count of the days since my son was stolen from his life, from me, from my husband, from himself. Then I go to the kitchen and I take the masking tape and a black marker out of the junk drawer. I write the number of days on the tape, I rip it off, and I stick it on my chest, just above my heart. It's remarkable to me how sickening it is every single time. Today, it's up to 100. On the night of October 6th, my son Hirsch kissed me and said, "Love you, see you tomorrow." And every day, I wait for that promised tomorrow. My life is unrecognizable to me. I myself am unrecognizable to me. Since October 7th, I have not gone back to my before job, or cooked, or listened to music, or watched TV, or put on makeup, or worn jewelry, or had a moment of calm, or an instant without fear, or felt like a person. I pray every day that Hirsch stays strong, survives, and comes home to me tomorrow, and then I will finally be able to throw away my tape and my marker. Here's what Rachel shared this past year on Mother's Day, day 219 of Hirsch's captivity, a beautiful letter that she wrote to her son Hirsch 20 years ago on the night before he turned 3 years old. To my very sweetest Hirsch, tomorrow you will turn 3 years old. These past days have been so emotional for me. Every time I turn around, I'm crying. Last night, I walked into your room and I watched you sleeping next to your teddy bear. I gently touched your long, soft, curly hair that we will cut for the first time in just a few days. I went back into my room and I cried and I cried. Dada just looked at me and then he got up to look at you himself. He came back to me and he said, "There will be many more of these." All that kept going through my mind were the words of a Yiddish lullaby I heard many years ago. Your mother will cry 1,000 tears before you grow to be a man. Hirsch, these last 3 years have been the most challenging, but the best years of my life. Nothing can begin to describe my love for you. And one day when you have children, and I can't even fathom that now, you will know this kind of so much more than love. Time moves so quickly. To understand this, one needs to only look at one's children. The days fly by, and before I know it, we'll be taking you to college. I can't imagine what a basket case I will be then. I wish this could all go more slowly. I treasure each and every moment I spend with you. I am so blessed that it scares me. What did I do to be so lucky to have you? I wish you the best of everything this world has to offer. Love, happiness, kindness, laughter, success. But most of all, I wish for you a child like yourself who will bring to you all the light that you have brought to me. And finally, the words that Rachel spoke at Hirsch's funeral. I have had a lot of time during the past 332 days to think about my sweet boy Hirsch. And the one thing I keep thinking about is how out of all the mothers in the entire world, God chose to give Hirsch to me. What must I have done in a past life to deserve such a beautiful gift? It must have been something glorious. If I'm being honest, it's not that Hirsch was perfect, but he was the perfect son for me. And I want to thank God right now in front of all of you for giving me this magnificent present of my Hirsch. For 23 years, I was privileged to have the most stunning honor of being Hirsch's mama. I'll take it and say thank you. I just wish it had been for longer. In her eulogy for Hirsch, Rachel was channeling the words from this morning's Haftarah. Rachel mevaka al baneha. Rachel was crying for her children. Haben yakir li Ephraim im yelech ha'ashuim ki midabre bo zachar es karenu od. Is Hirsch not a precious child to me? Is he not a young boy, my greatest source of delight? And when I speak of him, I will remember him once more. There's a reason we don't start the Jewish year by reading stories about our forefathers. We begin the Jewish year by reading about the great mothers of Jewish history. Because as Rachel Goldberg taught all of us over this past year, there is no force on earth more powerful than a mother's love. The rabbis of the Talmud teach that a father begins educating his child when that child turns 6, which means that for the first 6 years of a child's life, that child's education is the responsibility of its mother. And I think the rabbis were onto something, because we now know from neuroscience that the first 6 years of a child's life are essential in terms of both cognitive and emotional development. In theory, the more love a child receives during those formative years, the more loving a person that child will ultimately grow up to become. And I think that's the reason the rabbis left the early years of a child's education to the mother. Because nothing can teach a child what it means to love more than the love they receive from their mother. I'm not a Jewish mother myself, but I have a Jewish mother, and I'm married to a Jewish mother, and I can tell you that that is absolutely true. There is no substitute for a mother's love. We read about Sarah, Hagar, Hannah, and Rachel on Rosh Hashanah as we begin the new year, because we not only celebrate the love that they modeled, but we strive to emulate that same sense of love in our own lives. We want to bring their sense of mothering love into the world, because we all know that a mother's love is something that this world desperately needs, especially at this dark moment. I want to conclude this morning by sharing a poem that Rachel Goldberg wrote for a mother in Gaza on day 67 of Hirsch's captivity. She shared this poem in a speech that she delivered before the United Nations in Geneva in December, because Rachel Goldberg understands, maybe better than any person on earth, the power of a mother's love. And she hoped and she prayed that that power would bring an end to this war, that her love for her son would have the power to bring Hirsch and all of the hostages home. Here is Rachel's poem. It's called One Tiny Seed. There's a lullaby that says your mother will cry 1,000 tears before you grow to be a man. I have cried 1,000,000 tears in the last 67 days. We all have. And I know that way over there's another woman who looks just like me, because we are all so very similar. And she has also been crying. All those tears, a sea of tears, they all taste the same. Can we take them, gather them up, remove the salt, and pour them out over our desert of despair, and plant one tiny seed, a seed wrapped in fear, trauma, pain, war, and hope, and see what grows? Could it be that this woman, so very like me, that she and I could be sitting together in 50 years, laughing without teeth, because we have drunk so much sweet tea together, and now we are so very old, and our faces are creased like worn out brown paper bags. And our sons have their own grandchildren, and our sons have long lives, one of them without an arm, but who needs 2 arms anyway? Is it all a dream, a fantasy, a prophecy? One tiny seed. Stay strong, survive. Shana Tova, and Am Yisrael Chai.